Consistency. What is it and why do we really need it? Welcome to Grow Together, Learn Together. My name's Mel. I'm an early childhood educator and primary school teacher. And I'm really excited to share with you some of my knowledge and experience when it comes to raising children. Consistency basically means we have a regular pattern of behaviour, a regular pattern of expectations, and that children know where they stand. Children need consistency and routine. It helps them to learn and grow. Think about yourself. If you don't know what's coming up, what to expect on a given day, if the rules or the expectations constantly change, you feel a bit lost. You feel like you don't really know what's going on. The same is true for children. And it's up to us as parents and educators to give them that consistency and that routine. It's really important for discipline, but just in general. First, I want to talk a little bit about routines. Routines provide stability. Stability gives children a base on which to sit and where they can always come back to. I'm talking about routines for getting ready in the morning, going to bed at night. You don't have to be rigid. You don't have to never waver from the routine. It's always good to be flexible because children need to learn how to be flexible. But they need those routines so that they know where they stand. It might be as simple as dinner is always at 6 and everybody sits together at the table and eats dinner. Whatever it might be, it's the same. That is the expectation. It doesn't mean that you can't go out for dinner or have a pizza night on the couch, but it just means that children will learn that when we all have dinner at the table, the expectation is that they join you at the table. Then when they get to be teenagers, it's no surprise that you ask them to put their phones away, for example. Children don't have their own routines. They need you to set up those routines. They need you to provide a stable, safe environment where things are expected when they know where they stand. Routines can help with that. It also helps you with the really tricky times of day, like getting kids ready, putting them to bed, particularly when they're younger. Part of growing, as I'm sure you all know, is pushing against those boundaries, finding where the boundaries can wobble a little and where they're rigid, knowing their own power. It's really important that you maintain these routines as much as possible. It also helps to limit the difficulty of things like getting to bed. The sooner you start these routines, the sooner that they learn that those are the expectations you have for them. So that's a little bit about routines. Now on to consistency. Consistency within those routines is important because, like I said, it provides a stable base that children can count on. It helps them to feel safe. It helps them to know where they stand. Within that routine and that consistency and those boundaries, they can start to make decisions. It might be that they want to play with their train set or their Duplo, and you've told them that they're going to have 20 minutes to do that before dinner time. They might not really know what 20 minutes is, but they start to get a feel for the idea that they have a set amount of time in which to do that, and they can think about what they want to do. If you stick to those boundaries and those expectations, they'll start to make those decisions and make those estimations themselves. To begin with, they'll probably get upset because they haven't had time to build a really awesome tower. But if you stick to that, don't give in, don't let them have the extra time, tell them it's time to pack up, it becomes consistent. They start to understand, I've got 20 minutes. They start to get a grasp of how long that is. It actually helps with other learning. Consistency in routine and expectations are important for children. Consistency is also important for discipline and behaviour management. It doesn't mean that you have to be harsh, but you need to decide what your expectations are. Make it clear and then stick to it. Children will push against those expectations. That's part of growing up. It's up to you to be firm and stick to them. Make sure they know that what the consequences will be, and then make sure that you follow through with those consequences. Don't get me wrong, I know it's really hard. Sometimes we just don't want to fight. Sometimes it's just easier to give in. But in the long run, it's not. And it makes it much harder for you and for your children if you consistently give in to them. So what we need to do then is decide what's actually really important to us, what the deal breakers are, and those are the things that we stick to. It means we have a little bit of wiggle room. You can make decisions with your children and be flexible about some things. If you've told them that it's 10 minutes of playtime and then 10 minutes of homework time, potentially you can allow that to be movable. But something like we don't swear in this house, or we don't watch particular things, we always go to bed at 9 o'clock, those are the sorts of things that you might decide are really important to you and that you need to be firm on. Make sure the consequences are very clear and make sure you follow through. Particularly for younger children, the consequences need to make sense. They need to follow a logical pattern. If you have two children and they're fighting over a toy, take the toy away. That's a logical consequence of the fight. You both want to play with this thing. You're not being very nice to each other. You don't get to play with the thing. They can understand why that's happened, and it will help them to learn that there are consequences for certain behaviour. But that is a deal breaker for you. We don't fight. It's up to you to make up those rules and decide what's important to you and what's not important to you, where you can be flexible and where you're going to be steadfast. Because it can be really hard to stay steady, it's important for your own sanity and for the consistency within your house that you really only think about 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 things that are really important. That way you won't be constantly having a battle with your children, and they will learn where your boundaries are, and they'll start to respect that. You won't get as much push against it, and when you do and you stand firm, they'll accept it much more easily. If you don't stand firm, if you're not consistent, it doesn't provide stability. It makes them feel like they don't know what's happening. It's better all around for everybody if we are consistent and we stick to those routines. Like I said, it doesn't mean you have to be strict. It doesn't mean that you have to be a mean parent who doesn't let your children do things. But it does mean that when it comes to the things that you've decided are important to you, that you stick with them. Everybody will be better off. I know that this video has been a little bit intense, but this is something that's really important to me, and I think it's really important overall for raising children. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the things that children need when it comes to discipline, routine, and stability throughout the next few videos. I hope that you have found this interesting and valuable. See you later.